From today on, I'll be taking care of this little one. Thanks for everything up until now, my mother-in-law exclaimed. This to me with a warm smile on her face. Out of the blue, she came over to our house, grinning as she hugged my daughter, Emily. Emily looked dumbfounded at first, but as she began to comprehend her grandmother's words, she tried to wriggle out of her embrace. After holding Emily tight, my mother-in-law flashed another bright smile and said, "You should just leave now. My name is Susan. I work in an office building in the city. I'm a working mom. The building I work in isn't huge, but it's bustling because it houses more than just our company. I always find myself chatting with women of my age group, so I have many friends in the building. I've been recognized for my work in the accounting department and lead a fulfilling life. When I get home, my husband, Paul, and our 11-year-old daughter, Emily, are there. Paul and I manage our busy schedules, sharing household chores and childcare responsibilities. He genuinely cherishes both Emily and me. However, our blissful days started to change little by little. Paul tends to impose his own likes and interests on Emily. At first, it was soccer. It's one thing if Emily wants to play, but it felt forceful when he'd only let her play soccer even though she'd rather play in the sandbox. Yet as she grew older, Emily became a soccer-loving girl who could stand toe-to-toe with her male classmates. Of course, she dreams of making her mark as a female soccer player in the future. I've become one of her biggest fans. But Paul's enthusiasm seemed to last only in the early days. Lately, he's all about swimming. Girls should definitely try swimming. Maybe synchronized swimming could be good, he said during dinner. Emily made a face, clearly perplexed. But Dad, I love soccer. I find it more fun than swimming and I want to do it even more. Soccer is cool, sure, but why would you, a girl, want to play a sport typically considered for boys? A palpable tension runs between the two of them at times like these. I always struggle with when I should intervene. Emily has her own thoughts, so I'm torn whether it's right to interrupt and end the conversation. Emily talks back to her father. Gender doesn't matter right now. Soccer is fun, and pursuing it is my dream. You've been playing soccer so much, you've gotten quite toned. You're tanned and look like a boy. Don't women need to be slim to be attractive? If you were swimming, you wouldn't have to worry about tanning, he said. Emily is taken aback by his condescending remarks. I immediately scold my husband. How could you say that to our daughter? Her physique is proof of the hard training she's been doing. Just because she's our only daughter, even though she's training so hard, she's still a girl. What's going to happen if she ends up being a muscular woman with a small chest? Isn't that sad? Why can you say such horrible things? Shocked, Emily falls silent. I yelled at my husband even louder than before, but he doesn't seem to realize he's being insensitive about female soccer players. Sure, the teams are co-ed now, but our competition is mostly men. Emily has her limits being a girl. There aren't any female-only soccer teams around here, so maybe it's time to consider something else. I'm not saying she should go pro in swimming. Isn't it normal for girls to have swimming lessons? Enough. Emily storms out, knocking her chair back, and from today on, I'll be taking care of this little one. Thanks for everything up until now, my mother-in-law exclaimed. This to me with a warm smile on her face. Out of the blue, she came over to our house, grinning as she hugged my daughter, Emily. Emily looked dumbfounded at first, but as she began to comprehend her grandmother's words, she tried to wriggle out of her embrace. After holding Emily tight, my mother-in-law flashed another bright smile and said, "You should just leave now. My name is Susan. I work in an office building in the city. I'm a working mom. The building I work in isn't huge, but it's bustling because it houses more than just our company. I always find myself chatting with women of my age group, so I have many friends in the building. I've been recognized for my work in the accounting department and lead a fulfilling life. When I get home, my husband, Paul, and our 11-year-old daughter, Emily, are there. Paul and I manage our busy schedules, sharing household chores and childcare responsibilities. He genuinely cherishes both Emily and me. However, our blissful days started to change little by little. Paul tends to impose his own likes and interests on Emily. At first, it was soccer. It's one thing if Emily wants to play. Who do you think is taking care of our daughter? Just because you're my wife doesn't mean you can boss me around. Tell her clearly to quit soccer. My husband's habit of ordering me and our daughter around and saying things like, just because you're a woman or just because you're my wife, as if our gender gives him the right, stems from a specific reason. It's a boss of his. We also know him privately, and he's a very close friend. He has been to our house, and apparently he had a lot to say behind our backs when he found out we both work. This boss seems friendly and easygoing on the surface, and my husband enjoyed his company because of his personality. However, as time went on, the boss's distorted views towards women became more apparent. He started to emphasize the differences between men and women, making more remarks that belittle women's capabilities. At first, my husband would just laugh it off, but gradually those words started to stick. The boss's belief that women have a domestic role and it's greedy for them to work started casting a shadow on my husband's heart. This shift in my husband's attitude created a huge rift in our relationship. Initially, he was pressuring me, who works outside the home, to quit my job and stay home. But he realized that with his income alone, it would be hard to maintain our current lifestyle, so he stopped pushing me outright to quit. But he keeps on preaching about the greatness of being a stay-at-home mom. Yet that wasn't enough, and eventually his frustration turned towards our daughter. He probably sympathizes with his boss because he imposes his own tastes and beliefs. He doesn't think about Emily's opinions or her future at all. He just thinks that since Emily is a woman, it's natural for her to obey his commands. The only way to mend this strange relationship is to change him. But no matter what we say or how, nothing seems to get through to him. On top of that, all we get is an outdated response. Who does she think she is? A woman challenging me. I was distressed, but I couldn't let Emily suffer any longer. I finally brought up the idea of divorce to Paul. I want to distance myself from you for Emily's future, I said, but he was vehemently against it. This is why women are so foolish. If you really had Emily's future in mind, you'd know it's a bad idea to divorce a breadwinner like me. With rising college expenses, do you really think you can support her all by yourself? You're just too dumb. I'll guide you properly, so just shut up and follow, he said. This with an angry expression. His words were filled with confidence, as if he believed he was completely in the right. I've reached my limit. Taking a deep breath, I faced him. Yes, our income will decrease, and preparing for college will be hard. But above all, I can't leave Emily by your side any longer. You don't think about her future at all. You just want to control her, don't you? This is the prime time of her life, and it's unfair for her to be dominated by her father. That's why I think we should part ways. I don't expect Emily to become a professional athlete, nor do I think she absolutely can't make it. I just want to support my daughter in pursuing what she loves. And you, who disrespect our daughter's dignity, are nothing but harmful. I believe it's my duty to provide an environment where Emily can safely explore her potential. Don't just casually bring up divorce. If you want to leave, then just go on your own, I said. You're telling me to leave. When did I say that? And how do you plan to live with Emily if I do? Going to call your mom. Paul crossed his arms, remaining stubborn. But when I stood my ground, his expression quickly turned smug. "It's your fault for mentioning divorce. I should just call my mom now and let her discipline you." Paul acted immediately. He called his mother, who lives nearby. "Hello, Mom. Look, in a bit of a bind. Susan suddenly mentioned getting a divorce. I'm just as shocked. I hate to ask, but can you come over and set her straight? You're a woman too. Dad must have set you straight before, right? So you can do the same for Susan," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Most of what he said was blaming me for being selfish. It's quite sickening to hear him talk to his mother in that way. Regardless, my mother-in-law replied, "I'm on my way." And it turned out we'd be discussing the divorce. "Is Grandma coming? Who do you think is taking care of our daughter? Just because you're my wife doesn't mean you can boss me around. Tell her clearly to quit soccer." My husband's habit of ordering me and our daughter around and saying things like, "just because you're a woman" or "just because you're my wife," as if our gender gives him the right, stems from a specific. Then she turned to Paul and me with an angry look. "I've heard everything, Emily. You've been through a lot." Paul smirked, thinking he had the upper hand, and glanced at me smugly. "From now on, I'll take care of Emily. Susan, you can't take it anymore, can you? Just pack up your things and be out by tonight." Upon hearing this, Paul burst out laughing, pointing at me. "See, even Mom agrees. If you apologize now, I might forgive you. How dare you, a wife, defy your husband like that? Say you're sorry at this." Emily jumped out of her grandmother's embrace. She ran past the adults and into her room. My mother-in-law tried to follow, but the door opened immediately. There stood Emily with a backpack on, a glossy sports bag slung over her shoulder, and even a cute little green carry-on suitcase in tow. She approached me with a smile. "I'm ready to go. Grandma can take care of the rest." "I don't want a creepy dad like him," she said, then took my hand. Her sunburned skin made her seem more robust, just like Paul had mentioned. Yet feeling the warmth of her still tender hand, I nearly shed a tear. "Let's get going, Mom." The one who was shocked was Paul. I had mentioned leaving, but he probably hadn't anticipated Emily wanting to come with me. Moreover, he was surprised at the bags packed to the brim and how well prepared everything seemed. "What are you talking about, Emily? You can stay in this house. What we don't need is a nagging mother, right? I'm going to kick out her, and Grandma will come in your place. I'm going to take you to swimming lessons next time, so calm down, all right?" The husband, even at this point, kept making selfish remarks. However, it seemed the daughter had decided to ignore Paul, turning her back on him completely. Suddenly, the mother-in-law interjected with a puzzled look. "Swimming lessons, not soccer." Before I could say anything, the daughter spoke up. "Dad doesn't like seeing my training and getting a muscular body. He thinks I should get a nice figure, wear cute swimsuits, and have lots of pictures taken. He says girls feel happier when they're popular with boys." Creepy, right? Hearing this from the daughter, both the mother-in-law and I were in shock. The mother-in-law raised her voice. "Paul, what on earth are you telling our daughter? You're not looking at her in that way, are you?" Paul flinched and looked around nervously. It was clear that even in situations like this, Paul was always on thin ice with his mother. "It's a misunderstanding, but come on. No one wants a girl who looks like a man, right? It's definitely better if she focuses on her looks, dresses to impress guys, and uses makeup. In the end, she's going to support her husband at home, right?" Paul tried to defend himself. My mother-in-law sighed. What would your late father say if he heard this? Thinking my mother-in-law was on his side, Paul looked even more flustered. But it wasn't surprising. Almost all of Paul's derogatory comments about women and the way he treated me and Emily had been reported to his mother. But I had hesitated to tell her about his criticisms of Emily's physique. It would have been too painful for any mother to hear. Paul had long since lost his filter. He always spoke disrespectfully about women, even to his mother. And no amount of scolding had any effect. My mother-in-law, unlike Paul, was a strong, dependable person. If eventually, after several consultations, we divorced and a plan was set for my mother-in-law to re-educate Paul. "I'm sorry, Emily Susan. I'll take responsibility for raising this boy," the mother-in-law said, clearly referring to her son Paul. Thus, in a role reversal, Emily and I temporarily moved into his mother's house. True to her word, she moved into our home and began Paul's re-education. The divorce was finalized, and we were supposed to go back to our normal lives. Finding a new place and dividing assets might take time, but living as a married couple was out of the question. As soon as Emily put down her backpack at her grandmother's house, she burst into tears. I hugged her, feeling more than ever that I never wanted to see Paul again. Just a week later, while I was at work, I had an unexpected visitor. The visitor's name was Mr. Smith, a name that sounded familiar to me. When I confirmed his full name, it was unmistakably that of my husband's boss, the very man who had influenced Paul so much. I was shocked and wondered why such a person would come to my workplace. Yet I headed to the lounge booth within the office building. We have limited space for guests at our company, and it was currently being used for meetings with other clients. When we run out, we often borrow common areas within the building for major negotiations. We might rent out a separate meeting room. Most of our walk-in visitors are salespeople, so I asked him to wait in the lounge. But it wasn't just Mr. Smith there. Paul was there too. Apparently, they had both taken a detour from their field sales to visit me. "We can't talk properly at home with my mother around." "Figured you'd take us seriously at work," Paul said. It seemed my husband, knowing I had his mother on my side, brought his idolized boss. What he wanted to say was the same old line: "You need to settle down and listen to me. Heads of households should have the final say. You know, women are just an accessory to men. Dressing up nicely is a given. Thinking they can compete with men in sports or anything is presumptuous, man. I'm far from perfect, can't discipline my unruly wife or daughter, Mr. Smith. I really need your help." Looking at my husband laughing and acting smug, I was getting a headache. To make matters worse, he said he would never approve of Emily's soccer and assumed I might as well quit my not-so-important job. The issue was Mr. Smith sitting next to him, grinning at my discomfort, backing up every word Paul said. There wasn't Paul's mother here to take my side. I was being interrupted at work and grappling with how to handle them. Their harsh words paralyzed me. I was holding back from snapping at them, fearing things might escalate to violence. I could feel my eyes burning with tears. I was just grateful Emily wasn't here to see this. I wouldn't want her to see her father with such a scornful expression. I was contemplating leaving without a word when someone spoke to us. "Isn't that Mr. Smith from AB Company's sales department? What are you guys up to?" Both men turned around and in unison quickly stood up. An older gentleman was standing there. He was well-dressed and clearly held a position of authority. Beside him was a woman, perhaps his aide or secretary. From the disdainful look she gave Paul and Mr. Smith, it was clear she had heard their conversation. "Mr. Miller, what brings you here?" "My office is on the 3rd floor. You guys usually visit the branch office's conference room for sales. I guess you might not be interested in knowing this, but it might be useful for you to remember whether you're visiting the branch or the headquarters. At the sound and content of the man's chilling voice, Paul and Mr. Smith were left speechless, their faces pale as ghosts. The man was a business owner on the 3rd floor of the office building. If he didn't have meetings or appointments, he'd be over here, and I've seen him a few times before. The CEO remembered me and had been secretly listening to the intense conversation between us in the lounge. It wasn't until his secretary mentioned it that he realized Mr. Smith was a sales rep from one of their partners. Heard she's your wife, huh? To act that way towards a woman and kids, was that young sales guy with you, Mr. Smith? Hand over your business card now. The CEO then collected business cards from both of them, casting a disdainful look at the trembling pair. After all, they had been working in a conference room so grand one could mistake it for the CEO's office of a headquarters. I found out later that Paul's company had stirred up a massive commotion, like poking a hornet's nest. We'll have to reconsider our partnership with you. Please, I beg of you. I was just disciplining my not-so-competent wife. We won't cause any trouble for your company. Forgot that most of our consumers are homemakers raising kids. Even if it's someone outside the company, being associated with someone of such beliefs would hurt our image. Just get out of here. Paying no attention to me, my ex-husband and his boss kept apologizing. But even their desperate pleas reeked of misogyny, and the CEO remained stern. I wasn't in a position to defend them, so I just watched. Perhaps due to the commotion, various office workers were giving the two cold stares. Eventually, the two were chased out of the building like flies. Later on, the CEO did reduce and eventually cut off all business dealings with my ex-husband's company. Rumors also spread about their behavior, causing many clients to back out, and the company removed the two from their sales positions. They lost trust from clients and within their company, ending up in positions where they were given no significant tasks. As for me, since that incident, the CEO has personally introduced me to some top-notch divorce attorneys, and we've kept in touch. I was advancing with custody investigations with his support, juggling work matters concerning Emily and all procedures. They were tough, but with legal support, I was able to handle things more calmly. However, one day my ex-husband and Mr. Smith showed up at my workplace again. Please get Mr. Miller for me. Help me out, they pleaded loudly. I didn't feel as intimidated by them as I used to. It wasn't that they had changed, but rather that I had grown capable of taking their words calmly. Whispers and murmurs of surprise emanated from my colleagues towards the two who waited outside. This is going to cause problems for other companies too. Eventually, I had no choice but to call the police. When they arrived, my ex-husband, Paul, got aggressive and was taken away. Thankfully, no one got hurt, and while he wasn't arrested, the ostracization within the company intensified. Paul, once seen as a potential star in sales alongside Mr. Smith, couldn't bear the shame and chose to resign early. As for Smith, his attitude didn't change. In fact, his behavior worsened due to his dissatisfaction with how he was treated. He brazenly started to slack off at work, arguing it was the company's fault for not giving him work. Furthermore, his aggressive behavior and misogynistic comments increased, and it seems he eventually faced a lawsuit from female colleagues. Later on, through the grapevine, I heard Mr. Smith sought legal help. However, when a female attorney listened to his story, he spewed outrageous comments like, "Get me a male attorney," or "How can a woman be an attorney? How much did you pay? Maybe you're paying with your body," leading him to be banned from that law firm. I was transferred to a new branch of my company. Given that my ex-husband knew my whereabouts and being a single mother had its challenges, I was moved to a department that prioritized a more child-friendly work environment. I couldn't move too far because of Emily's school and soccer team. I didn't want to change her environment entirely. Fortunately, the new location was just a few subway stops away, so as long as I was careful, I wouldn't run into Paul. Working in this new environment was quite stimulating for me. I could ensure time at home to chat with Emily, feeling fulfilled in both my work and personal life. Emily still passionately played soccer every day. I'm so happy to fully support her dreams. I decided to occasionally meet with Paul's mother. We'd make a bit of a trip to enjoy a cup of coffee at a fancy cafe and chat. Emily seems to be back in good spirits, doesn't she? Yes, she really is. She adapted to the new environment quickly. Leaving home seems to have been good for her. I should have made that decision sooner. When I smiled and nodded, my mother-in-law took a moment and then talked to me about my ex-husband, Paul's behavior. Paul had quit his job and apparently stayed home for a while, deeply depressed. During that time, Mr. Smith faced lawsuits from female colleagues at the company, and naturally they lost touch. He probably had other things on his mind. It seems that since putting some physical distance from Mr. Smith, Paul's perspective has been gradually changing. I was told that he's breaking away from the influence of Mr. Smith and slowly going back to how he used to be. I quietly breathed a sigh of relief. While it seems we still need my mother-in-law to keep an eye on him for a bit, I do prefer the kinder Paul I first once knew. It's uncertain when he might relapse, so I haven't let him see our daughter, Emily. Any exchanges are done through lawyers or Paul's mother, avoiding direct contact. I won't ever say you should remarry him. If he's truly remorseful, he'd feel too guilty to even ask for it. You've got Emily to consider, too. You both should prioritize your own happiness, Paul's mother concluded. With that, I had always known she was dependable, but with this matter, I realized how invaluable she really is. Regardless of my history with Paul, I want to have a good relationship with her as an individual. When I expressed this, she got teary-eyed but agreed shyly. We're planning to watch a soccer game together. Emily has been selected as a regular player among the seniors, so we're going to cheer her on with all we've got.